So now that we've defined our demand curve and we've defined our supply curve, we can talk about the interaction between consumers and producers, or other words, our market equilibrium. A market equilibrium is defined as a price at which quantity supplied equals quantity demanded. So in other words, we're going to have an intersection of our supply and demand curves. The price at which those two curves intersect is the equilibrium price. And then that quantity, which is equal, is the equilibrium quantity. We can also talk about when a curve shifts, what happens to price and quantity in the market. But first, a little bit about what's called the market mechanism, or Adam Smith's invisible hand. So the theory is that the market is supposed to be self-correcting. So in other words, if the price is too high, there will be some downward pressure on price, or if the price is too low, there will be price on the pressure to come up. So what do we mean by a price being too high or too low? Well, let's have a look at this map, this graph here. What this graph is showing us is that at a price of $5, the quantity demanded at that price is lower, only 10 units, than the quantity supplied. So this is what we call a market surplus. In this case, the price is so high that there is not enough quantity demanded to meet what the suppliers have produced. So consider this, your supplier, you've got all of this surplus that you're not selling. What are you likely going to do in order to try to sell? You might lower your prices, so this would put downward pressure on the price back towards the equilibrium until quantity demanded is the same as quantity supplied. Or conversely, if the price was too low, here we can see at a price of $3, the quantity supplied is only 10, but consumers on this market demand 20 units. So there's a shortage. You have a whole bunch of people who are trying to purchase this product, but not very many available for purchase. What's this going to do? It's going to put upward pressure on price back to the equilibrium. Right, so this is the idea of Adam Smith's invisible hand of the self-correcting market. The interaction between buyers and sellers will ultimately determine an equilibrium price where the number which consumers would like to purchase is the same as the number that producers would like to sell. All right, so what about shifts of a curve? We've got our equilibrium price and quantity. What happens if we have an increase or decrease in supply or demand? All right, so these, it's kind of helpful to just get some practice. There's a bunch of, learning curve, homework, quiz questions where it gives you a situation. It asks you to tell what happens to price or quantity in the market when one of the curves shifts. So I think it's useful for the quiz and exam situation to get comfortable just jotting down a quick supply-demand market. Right, we've got our two axes, price and quantity. We've got an upward sloping supply curve, a downward sloping demand curve. And then we can map out, if one of these curves shifts, what is the impact on the equilibrium price and quantity in the market. All right, so here we're seeing an increase in demand. And remember, an increase of a curve is always to the right. So we have this new demand curve, D1, which is shifted to the right of D0. And this has resulted in a new market equilibrium, a new price at which quantity supplied equals quantity demanded. So our old market equilibrium was here at P0 and Q0. At P1, the point at which quantity demanded equals quantity supplied is here. So we have a higher price and a higher quantity. All right, so once again, it's useful for you to get a little bit quicker at just jotting down a quick graph. Keep some scratch paper with you for test and quiz taking. And if you see an example that says demand increases, what is the result on price and quantity? You can draw a quick demand increase like this, and then hopefully fairly quickly see that price has gone up, quantity has also increased. Okay, in this example, we have a decrease in demand. So our demand curve is shifting to the left. Remember, decrease always to the left. Once again, you can jot down your decrease of demand. You can show what happens to price. Price here has gone down. Quantity now is lower than it was before. All right, showing some Shifts in supply. So here we have an increase or a shift to the right in supply towards higher quantities. When we shift the supply curve, that caused price to go down here from P0 to P1, but quantity went up. And finally, we have a decrease or shift to the left in supply. This is going to cause our quantity to fall, but our price to rise. Now, another shortcut as you're getting quicker with this, remember that our quizzes, exams, homework, everything in this class is open note and open book. So if you know where these slides are in the notes, you can keep these on hand to reference them. We've also got some potential for double shifts. I don't tend to ask a ton of double shift questions. I think there's maybe one double shift question on my exam, which is supposed to be kind of like an A level or harder question. But what happens when both of the curves shift? Once again, we can draw these shifts. So here we're showing an increase in supply and an increase in demand. We can see that quantity definitely went up. What about price? We're not exactly sure. We would have to, I guess, take some measurements, or we would have to know exactly what that new price was to see whether it went up or down. But quantity definitely changed. Price, we're not so sure. All right, there's also this table that I've left you here to talk about what happens when one or both of these curves shift. So here we have our single shifts first, an increase in supply or a decrease in supply with no change in demand. They tell you what happens to equilibrium price and quantity, an increase or decrease in demand with no change in supply. And then we've got our double shifts. So once again, if you know where this is in the notes, this is a helpful tool for you to come back and reference, because there are certain questions like, suppose in the market for apples, there's an increase in demand. What will happen to price and quantity? Or sometimes the questions are asked in the form like, in the market for apples, the price of apples and quantity of apples increased. Which shift could have possibly caused this? And so once again, it's useful sometimes to have this tool to reference and come back here. Okay, so that's it for our second module, which is on supply, demand, and equilibrium. As always, reach out to me at austinlandini@missouri.edu if you have any questions about the class.